As a soon-to-be 76-year-old woman, I have some stories to tell. Would you like to hear some of them? I think most of the stories I can share are just ones about how things have changed in a good way sometimes, but in a just different way, technology particularly. Now, when I was in my 20s, just before I had my first child, I actually was working at the BBC. And the BBC was in White Lane, I think, in London. It was a huge building, the hub of the universe, the BBC News. And we used to have news during the day at 12 noon, 7 o'clock or 6:30, and 9 o'clock at night. And so we would work 10 hours on and then have the next day off. So one day on, one day off. I loved it. Gave me a chance to temp on those days that I didn't have to work. And also, it was just such a fun job. I mean, there was a real family atmosphere. Everybody walked around calling each other darling this and hello, darling, good morning. It was just so dramatic. The whole thing was great. But anyway, so there were about 8 of us women sitting at a desk, like a line, and we had our Olivetti typewriters, Olivetti, not electric, manual typewriters. And there was an editor's desk, like the deity. He was, the man in charge. And then there were the reporters, and the reporters would all go to editors and get their story. Then they would write the story, come to you and dictate it. Literally dictate it. Today, ladies and gentlemen, today we had this incident in somewhere, and this is what happened. And you would listen to what they were saying and type it. You really couldn't look at the type. You had to have really good typing skills. And I remember one of my favorite reporters was Brian Hanrahan, and he covered the Falklands War. I mean, he was just really amazing. I think he died quite young, but anyway, just memories of people and characters. Angela Rippon was one of the newsreaders, and it was just like, oh my goodness, I am here. So I'll never forget though. So basically, I'll tell you how it worked. So I would type the story. They go back to the editor. They would make changes, and I'd maybe do a retype, and then they would send it to the person that typed the auto cue, and that was where somebody would then type onto those, like literally a roll of paper, the auto cue, the words for the news reader to read. So once you were done, they would go and type it on this auto cue roller, and then they would just sit there and look very natural reading the story. And but things would happen sometimes. I mean, the 9 o'clock news, they would always give you a little bit of warning, but then there would be something that would happen, like I can remember once the Pope died, and it was like, lady, attention, we have breaking news. And then the reporters would like panic, like, who would get the story, so they would have to write it up, and then the girls, we would just sit there going, oh, please don't choose me. Please, no, don't choose me. Because it was like panic stations. And because you knew that the auto cue was rolling and the newsreader was waiting to read the breaking news story. But then, of course, they'd always come up to you and it would be like panic stations. And then I would close my eyes basically, and you could just type the story. Paper would go over to the next person to type the auto cue, and it was on. And do, and then you hear the music playing for the news beginning, and then the story would start being read. But that was it. It was so much fun, and I'm so glad I did it for a couple of years, and it was enough. But it was a real family. I think the BBC, of course, has changed. Everything's changed in the UK, but news and the way it's presented, the way it's put together has changed. But that editor, he was the person that really controlled the words, but the reporters were the ones that delivered it to us. We typed it, and then the auto cue person, and then the newsreader. Any questions? It was really fun. If you have anything, it's probably not of any interest to anybody, because here you are with everything automated, and don't even think what a typewriter is anymore, or what it actually does. But I enjoyed that time of my life. It was great.